I was standing in my bakery at 4:30 a.m., hands covered in flour, when my phone rang with my mother's ringtone. That alone should have been a warning. Mom never called before sunrise unless something was wrong. "Maya, we need to talk about the bakery," she said without preamble. No good morning, no how are you. Just straight to business. I balanced the phone between my shoulder and ear while continuing to knead the sourdough starter I'd been cultivating for 3 years. "What about it?" "Your father and I have been thinking. Serena's been struggling to find her footing after college, and we think it would be good for her to join you at Sweet Haven. As a partner." My hands stilled in the dough. A partner? Well, yes. Co-owner. It makes sense, she's family, and the business is doing so well now. It would give her stability and purpose. I looked around my bakery, Sweet Haven Artisan Bakery in downtown Portland, Oregon. The space I'd found as a gutted shell 5 years ago and transformed with my own hands. The ovens I'd saved for 2 years to buy. The vintage display cases I'd restored myself. The recipes I'd perfected through countless failed batches and sleepless nights. Every brick, every fixture, every success was built on my own sweat, tears, and maxed out credit cards. Mom, I built this business from nothing. Alone. Serena's never shown any interest in baking or business. She majored in art history. She needs an opportunity, Maya. And you have one to give her. Family helps family. There it was. The phrase that had governed my entire childhood. Family helps family, which always seemed to mean I helped Serena, never the other way around. "I'm not just handing over half my business to someone who's never worked a day in food service," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "We're not asking you to hand it over. We're asking you to share. Your father and I think it's only fair. We helped you, after all." My jaw clenched. "Help me how?" "We let you live at home rent-free while you were starting out." I'd lived in their basement for 8 months, 5 years ago, while working 3 jobs to save money for the bakery lease. I'd paid for all my own food, utilities, and expenses. And I'd moved out the second I could afford a studio apartment. "That's not the same as investing in the business, Mom. We gave you Grandma's mixer. Grandma's KitchenAid mixer, which she'd left to me specifically in her will because I was the only grandchild who'd learned to bake with her. Not alone. Not a gift from my parents. My inheritance. Mom, I appreciate that you want to help Serena, but Sweet Haven isn't the answer. I can't just make her a partner. Can't or won't?" My mother's voice had gone cold. "Maya, your sister is family. She's struggling. You have the means to help her and you're refusing out of, what? Selfishness? It's not selfish to protect something I built. We're coming over tonight to discuss this properly. 6 o'clock. Your father wants to talk to you about the business structure and how to transition Serena in smoothly." "Mom, I don't." 6 o'clock, Maya. "We'll see you then." She hung up. I stood there in my quiet bakery, flour dusting my arms, my sourdough starter going slack in my neglected hands. Through the front windows, I could see the Portland dawn beginning to break, painting the street in shades of gold and pink. I'd opened Sweet Haven 3 years ago after 2 years of planning, saving, and building. I'd worked as a line cook, a barista, and a night shift grocery stocker to save every penny. I'd taught myself accounting, marketing, and small business management through free YouTube videos and library books. I'd spent 18-hour days getting the space ready, doing most of the renovation work myself to save money. My parents had visited exactly twice in 3 years. Once for the grand opening, where they'd stayed for 20 minutes before leaving to attend Serena's art show. Once last month, when they'd stopped by and been visibly surprised that the place was actually quite busy. They'd never invested a dime. Never offered to help with the build-out. Never promoted my business to their friends or brought me customers. They'd considered my bakery a nice hobby until it started turning a real profit 6 months ago. And now they wanted to hand half of it to Serena. I finished shaping the sourdough loaves with mechanical precision, my mind racing. At 6 a.m., my assistant manager Chen arrived to help with the morning rush. "You okay, boss?" he asked, taking in my expression. "You look like you just got bad news. My parents want me to make my sister a partner in the bakery. She's never worked here. Never shown any interest. Never invested anything. They just think I should give her half of what I built." Chen, who'd been with me since 6 months after opening, working his way up from part-time baker to assistant manager, stared at me. "Are you serious?" "Completely." "What are you going to tell them?" "I don't know yet. But they're coming here at 6 tonight to discuss the business structure." Chen was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know what I think? I think you should tell them exactly what it took to build this place. Every maxed-out credit card. Every 16-hour day. Every batch of bread you threw away learning the recipes. Every time you chose buying equipment over buying groceries. Let them see what they're asking you to just give away." He was right. My parents had no idea what Sweet Haven represented because they'd never been part of the journey. That day passed in a blur of customers, orders, and the normal chaos of running a successful bakery. But in the back of my mind, I was preparing for the conversation that evening. At 5:45 p.m., I sent Shen and my other employees home. At 5:55, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at one of the small tables in the dining area, surrounded by the fruits of my labor. At exactly 6 p.m., my parents walked in, my father carrying a briefcase like he was attending a business meeting. My mother's expression was set in that familiar look of determination that meant she'd already decided how this conversation would end. Behind them walked Serena, my 23-year-old sister, looking uncomfortable but also vaguely entitled, a combination I'd seen on her face many times before when our parents were championing her latest need. "Maya," my father said, settling into a chair across from me with the air of someone about to negotiate a deal. "Let's talk about integrating Serena into Sweet Haven." "There's nothing to integrate," I said calmly. "This is my business. I built it alone. Serena isn't becoming a partner." My mother's eyes flashed. "Don't be difficult. We've already discussed this." "You discussed it." "I didn't agree to anything." My father pulled papers from his briefcase. "I've drawn up a partnership agreement. It's quite fair. Serena would receive 40% ownership in exchange for her active participation in the business. You'd retain 60% and majority decision-making power." I stared at him. 40%. For what investment? Her time and effort going forward. I invested $30,000 of my own money into this business. Not counting the years of sweat equity. What is Serena investing? She's investing her future, my mother said. And her dedication. She needs this, Maya. Can't you see how much she's struggling? I looked at Serena, who was examining her nails, not meeting my eyes. "Serena, do you even want to work in a bakery?" She shrugged. "I mean, it seems like it could be fun. And Mom and Dad think it's a good opportunity." Fun. 3 years of grueling work, business risk, and constant stress. Fun. Have you ever worked in food service? I asked. No, but I can learn. How hard can it be? How hard can it be? I felt something snap inside me. Let me tell you how hard it is, I said quietly. I wake up at 3:30 a.m. every day. I spend the first 3 hours mixing dough, proofing bread, baking pastries. Then I manage staff, handle customer complaints, place supplier orders, manage inventory, balance books, market on social media, maintain equipment, handle health inspections, and somehow try to develop new recipes. I work 16-hour days regularly. I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. Last year, I worked through the flu because I couldn't afford to close. That's how hard it is. Serena looked slightly taken aback. My parents looked annoyed at my tone. We're not asking you to give her the business for free, my father said. The partnership agreement includes provisions for her to buy in over time from the profits. From profits I generate? So she gets ownership of my business by taking money out of the business I built? That's not buying in. That's me subsidizing her ownership. You're being selfish, my mother said, her voice sharp. Serena is your sister. When you were living in our basement, I paid my own way. I worked 3 jobs. And I was only there for 8 months while I saved for the lease deposit. We gave you Grandma's mixer. Grandma left it to me in her will. That wasn't your gift to give. It was mine. We've supported you. How? I stood up, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. How exactly have you supported this business? Did you invest money? No. Did you co-sign my loan when the bank initially declined me? No. Did you help with the build-out when I was doing 16-hour days of construction work? No. Did you promote my business to your friends? No. You visited twice in 3 years. Twice. You treated this like a cute hobby until 6 months ago when you saw I was actually making money. And now you want to hand 40% of it to Serena because she's struggling? The silence was deafening. Serena is your sister, my mother finally said, and her voice was cold as ice. And if you can't help your own family, then maybe we misjudged what kind of person you are. Maybe you did, I said. Because the person I am is someone who worked her ass off to build something from nothing, and I'm not going to hand it over to someone who thinks it might be fun. My father stood up, gathering his papers. You're making a mistake, Maya. Family is more important than business. Then why are you treating my business like it's something you can just redistribute? He didn't answer. They walked out, Serena trailing behind them, throwing me one last look that might have been apologetic or might have been annoyed, I couldn't tell. After they left, I sat in my empty bakery, the smell of fresh bread surrounding me, and felt something break open in my chest. Not sadness exactly. More like clarity. My parents had never valued what I'd built. They'd never seen the sacrifice, the risk, the years of struggle. To them, Sweet Haven was just a profitable asset that should be shared with Serena because that's what family does. But family should also respect boundaries. Should acknowledge effort. Should recognize that not everything can be redistributed in the name of fairness. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer, a woman named Rebecca Shaw who'd helped me set up the business structure 3 years ago. Rebecca, I need to make sure my business assets are completely protected from family claims. Can we talk tomorrow? Of course. What's going on? I told her everything. Maya, she said carefully, I need to ask, are your parents listed on any of your business documents? Any loans, any property titles, anything? No. Everything's in my name. Why? Good. Keep it that way. And I'd recommend you look into a formal operating agreement that specifies ownership and prevents unauthorized transfer of shares. Just as a safeguard. After we hung up, I sat in the dimming light of my bakery and made a decision. I wasn't going to cave. I wasn't going to let guilt or family pressure make me give away what I'd earned. And if that made me selfish in my parents' eyes, so be it. Sweet Haven was mine. And it was staying that way. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in family manipulation. My mother called daily, alternating between guilt trips, I can't believe you turn your back on your sister, and emotional manipulation, your father and I are so disappointed in you. My father sent emails with revised, partnership proposals, each one framed as increasingly generous offers that I was unreasonable for refusing. Serena texted sporadically, messages that ranged from, I thought we were close, to, Mom says you're being really selfish and I'm starting to agree. I stopped responding after the 3rd day. Instead, I focused on my business. I met with Rebecca and fortified every legal protection I had. I updated my operating agreement to explicitly state that ownership could not be transferred without significant financial investment and board approval, and since I was the only board member, that meant my approval. I also did something I'd been putting off, I started documenting everything. Every expense I'd paid. Every hour I'd worked. Every decision I'd made. Every risk I'd taken. I created a detailed timeline of Sweet Haven's development, from concept to current success. It filled 37 pages. When I finished, I sent it to my parents with a simple email. This is what you're asking me to give away for free. I wanted you to understand what you're demanding. My mother called within an hour. This is really unnecessary, Maya. We're not asking you to give anything away for free. Yes, you are. You're asking me to give Serena 40% ownership in exchange for showing up. That's the definition of free. She'd be working. So does Chen. So does my head baker Maria. So do all my employees. I pay them wages for their work. I don't give them ownership. They're not family. Exactly. So why should family get special treatment that undermines my business? There was a long pause. Your father and I have decided that if you won't help Serena, we'll help her ourselves. We're going to fund her opening a competing bakery. My blood went cold. Excuse me? You've shown us it's a viable business model. Serena deserves the same opportunity you had. We're prepared to invest $25,000 to help her get started. $25,000. They'd never offered me a cent. But for Serena, they'd fund a direct competitor to my business. That's your choice, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. But I'll make sure every supplier, every vendor, and every business owner in the Portland food scene knows that you're funding a competitor to deliberately hurt my business. That's not going to look good for Serena's venture. Are you threatening us? I'm stating facts. The food industry in Portland is a tight community. Word gets around. And actively sabotaging your own daughter's successful business to fund another daughter's untested venture? That's going to be noticed. My mother's voice went icy. If that's how you want to play this, fine. But don't expect us to be part of your life anymore. If you choose your business over your family, then you've made your priorities clear. My priorities have always been clear, Mom. I built something I'm proud of, and I'm not going to let anyone, including you, take it from me or destroy it because it doesn't fit your idea of how things should be. She hung up. I sat in my office, shaking, and called Chen. They're threatening to fund a competing bakery for Serena, I said when he answered. Jesus. Are they serious? Completely. Maya, even with funding, Serena has no experience. No recipes. No reputation. No customer base. Starting a bakery from scratch when you don't know the industry? She'll fail within 6 months. I know. But they'll blame me for not helping her. For not preventing her failure by giving her my business. That's insane. That's family. Over the next month, I watched from a distance as my parents actually followed through. They found a space for Serena, a small storefront in Southeast Portland. They funded her equipment purchases. They hired a consultant to help with the business plan. And Serena posted about it constantly on social media. Starting my new venture. Sweet Serena's Bakery opening soon. Thanks to my amazing parents for believing in me. Never once mentioning that this new venture was a direct shot at her sister's business. The Portland food community noticed. I started getting calls from suppliers I'd worked with for years. Maya, your sister's people called asking about wholesale pricing. They mentioned they're your family. We wanted to check with you first, is this some kind of partnership or? No partnership. She's opening a competing business. You should treat it like any other potential client. Got it. Just wanted to make sure. Seems weird, family competing like that. Seems weird to me too. 3 of my suppliers refused to work with Serena after learning the situation. 2 told her directly that they didn't appreciate being caught in the middle of a family conflict. 1 told me privately, what your parents are doing is pretty messed up. We're loyal to you. Sweet Serena's Bakery opened in January with a lot of fanfare from my parents' friends and a lot of curiosity from the local community. I didn't attend. I didn't congratulate her. I didn't acknowledge it at all. The reviews started coming in after the first week. They were not good. Bread was dry and underseasoned. Service was disorganized. Pastries tasted store-bought. Cute space, but the product doesn't match the ambience. Serena had no idea how to run a bakery. The consultant my parents hired had given her a template, but templates don't teach you how to proof dough or manage a kitchen or handle difficult customers or maintain consistency. By March, Sweet Serena's was struggling. By April, Serena was posting frustrated rants on social media about how hard business is, and people not being supportive enough. By May, my mother called. "Maya, Serena needs help. The bakery is failing and she's devastated. You need to step in and show her what she's doing wrong." "No," I said simply. "She's your sister. She's my competitor. A competitor that you funded specifically to hurt my business. Why would I help her succeed at that? We weren't trying to hurt your business. We were trying to give Serena an opportunity since you wouldn't. You tried to force me to hand over my business. When I refused, you funded a direct competitor. Those are the facts. Now you want me to train that competitor to take my customers? No. You're really going to let your sister fail? I'm going to let her experience the natural consequences of opening a business she wasn't prepared for. Just like I experienced consequences when I took business risks. The difference is, I prepared. I learned. I worked for it. She expected it to be handed to her. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. And I'm protecting my business." By June, Sweet Serena's bakery closed. My parents lost most of their $25,000 investment. Serena went back to living at home, posting vague social media messages about toxic people and family betrayal. My mother sent me one final email: "I hope you're happy. Your sister's dreams are crushed, and it's your fault for not helping her." I didn't respond. Instead, I did something I'd been planning for months. I hired a second full-time baker and expanded Sweet Haven's menu. I introduced a line of wholesale products for local coffee shops. I started offering baking classes on weekends. Sweet Haven didn't just survive the attempt to compete with it, it thrived. 6 months after Serena's bakery closed, I was featured in Portland Monthly magazine as one of the city's rising food entrepreneurs. The article detailed my journey building the business from scratch, the challenges I'd overcome, the risks I'd taken. My parents weren't mentioned once. The day the article came out, Chin brought champagne to the bakery. My staff threw an impromptu celebration. Local business owners who'd supported me through the drama with my family stopped by to congratulate me. And I stood in my bakery, my successful, thriving, entirely mine bakery, and felt nothing but pride. 2 weeks later, I got a text from Serena. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond immediately. Waited 3 days. Then called her. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked. "I wanted to apologize," she said, and her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I was wrong. About all of it. I thought running a bakery would be easy because you made it look easy. I had no idea how much work it actually is. How much skill. How much you sacrificed." "Okay," I said neutrally. Mom and Dad pushed me into it. I didn't even really want a bakery, I just wanted something to do, and they convinced me it was the right move. "But Maya, I failed so badly. And watching you succeed after, it made me realize how much you actually earned everything you have. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm genuinely sorry. You tried to tell me it wasn't something to just hand over, and I didn't listen. I thought you were being selfish. But you were being realistic. And I ruined our relationship over my own entitlement." I was quiet for a long moment. "I appreciate the apology. But Serena, it's going to take more than one conversation to rebuild trust. You and Mom and Dad all tried to force me to give up what I built. Then tried to compete with me out of spite. That's not something I can just forgive overnight. I know. I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand why you said no. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. We talked for 20 more minutes. It wasn't a full reconciliation, too much had happened, but it was a start. A small acknowledgement that maybe, eventually, we could have some kind of relationship again. My parents never apologized. Never acknowledged that they'd been wrong. In their minds, I was still the selfish daughter who'd refused to help her struggling sister. I could live with that. Because every morning at 3:30 a.m., when I walked into Sweet Haven and started my day, I knew exactly what I was working for. Not to prove anything to them. Not to win their approval. But because I'd built something real, something valuable, something mine. And I'd protected it when people who should have supported me tried to take it away. 1 year after my parents' initial demand, Sweet Haven was doing better than ever. I'd hired 2 more employees. Opened a second location. Started wholesaling to restaurants across Portland. And when people asked about my family, I told them the truth. They wanted me to hand over my business to my sister for free. I said no. We're not close anymore. Some people looked shocked. Some looked uncomfortable. Some nodded like they understood exactly what I was talking about. I didn't care about the judgment anymore. Because the people who mattered, my staff, my customers, my real community, they saw what I'd built and respected it. Sweet Haven wasn't just a bakery. It was proof that you could set boundaries with family, protect what you'd earned, and still succeed. And that was worth more than any forced family harmony built on my sacrifice. I'd built my business from scratch. And I'd kept it mine. That was victory enough.